Ready? Okay. Well, good evening. I will convene the study session at 5:02 p.m. And I'll start with roll call. We do have some trustees virtually attending this evening. Sandra?
Hi.
Hello. Jessica?
Present.
Hello. Bill?
Present.
Welcome. Lisa is not here yet. Dr. Holtum is here and I am here. And now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand. Okay, now it's time for public comments on study session items. So the board will extend an invitation to interested parties who wish to speak on items that will be discussed during the study session. For those attending remotely who wish to comment, use the raise your hand button to be called on to speak. And comments may also be emailed to backpack@ocesd.net. Please include your first and last name in your email. Comments received that pertain to the study session will be read into the record during this time. However, comments received without the sender's name will not be read, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per subject. Are there any comments to read from email?
I did not receive any via email.
Andrew?
On.
We have a hand, raised hand.
No, I'm just checking backpack real quick.
Yeah, I just actually received an email from Beth.
There's nothing in backpack.
Okay, we have
No.
It was
Okay.
Sandra. Beth is in the audience. She said that was just a general email.
Okay. Awesome. Good to know. Hi, Beth.
Do we have any other virtual hands up? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we will move on to the facilities discussion. Spencer. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No. There you go.
There we go. All right, thank you. Hi, this is Beth Parmentier, OHA President and kindergarten TK teacher in our district. I just wanted to thank the district for having this meeting and discussing behavior issues. I've noticed recently, Dr. Holtzman, I appreciate all the time you've put in at the classrooms at the school of my site, especially because John's been gone, but also having kind of the staff meetings and being able to take people's questions. We appreciate that. The special ed was very appreciative of your guys' time and able to talk with them. A lot of times just being listened to and knowing that people are hearing your concerns and thinking that that's going to get the ball rolling and help them is really appreciative, and we appreciate it here. So I just wanted to let you know how much we appreciate that, and let's go.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so I think we're ready for the facilities discussion.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Madam President. We appreciate us all being here tonight so that we can discuss facilities from the standpoint of the goal tonight is to talk with the board about our priorities moving forward and some of the facilities issues and ideas that we have for the district. I have shared with the board some of the current projects, some of our maintenance projects, and some possible future projects. And just for the record, for those who might be listening or not have it at hand, I will kind of read into the record very quickly some of the things that we're currently doing, and then ask the board if they have any questions or comments regarding those projects. And I'll do that for each piece. And then as we look at future projects, I'll be asking the board to kind of weigh in and help us prioritize what our projects are. I've asked Jim Campolo, our director of maintenance, to be here and help answer questions. I've also asked our CBO, Andrew James, to put together some figures and numbers so that we kind of know what kind of numbers we're working with as far as, what we have allotted to spend on some of these projects. But first and foremost, some of the current projects we have, the board has already approved, and we're currently working with it. The OFER generator, the CalSafe HVAC project, the CalSafe fixtures project that has to do with restrooms and things of that nature. OFER student pickup area where we need to asphalt that area, and we're currently advertising for that. The Mesa walkway fencing, which the board approved a couple months ago. And if you drive by there, it's almost 100% complete and it looks beautiful. We have the central track that we're working on with the city. We haven't started that project yet, but we're working with the city to do a joint venture to modernize and update the central track. We have HVAC replacement, and we're currently in phase 1 of that, replacing some of our very oldest HVAC units that are in the district that are as old as 50 years old. Central heating structure, district cabling, Bird Street alarm controls, and that's been completed as we've completed that sale. Carpet replacement for some of our schools, including Wyandotte and Ophir. The Central Bell project. Currently, our maintenance, and a lot of those current projects we're working with either contractors or outside consultants or outside people to help us complete those projects. The current projects that I'm going to read to you are being done by our maintenance department here within the district. Central touchless restrooms, the district office horseshoe. They've been working on taking out all the shrubs and around the horseshoe driveway in front of the district office, which is starting to look really, really nice. Ophir concrete, Ishii staff restroom, Ophir overflow seal repaint, Central MPR south cover, and the Central Wing 2 lawn. And so some of those projects are going to be done in the summertime when we don't have students here, but some of those other projects are underway right now. Now, specifically, the future projects that we're looking at, and we are looking to kind of prioritize, and some of these things we've already talked about and worked on, but we need to, one, give the board an update on kind of some of the status of these projects. And additionally, we want to be able to discuss these. So district painting, and that would include painting and updating our schools, including fixing some of the dry rot, include fixing some of the fascia board and some of that. We have the Stanford parking lot that we are currently working with the city and looking at that project. We have been saving some of our developer fees over the last several years because there's a ton of water and drainage issues underneath the Stanford parking lot, and it's going to need to be engineered and fully redone, which is going to be a very costly, but we have been saving, again, a lot of developer fee monies so that we can do that project. Oakdale bus shade, the Wyandotte cafeteria tile. The tile in the Wyandotte Elementary is very, very old, and it's been refinished and redone and resealed so many times that it now kind of has a very dingy look to it. And it's very dated. Ishii exercise area is very sun-baked and dilapidated, and so we're looking to either replace that or redo that area. The Wyandotte play shade, and when I say play shade, we're looking at putting some kind of structure over the play area so that the kids have more shading. We're currently looking at the kind of sunshade where you put up poles and then you put up, what's it called, Jim? Yeah, and cables, and it's a type of material it's not permanent. It's a shade type fabric, and it looks like a sail, and it just basically protects the equipment and the flooring from all the UV rays, but more importantly, it protects our kids and gives them areas to that are much cooler and out of the direct sunlight. And again, those are a lot cheaper than putting up permanent structures over those play structures. For Kindershade, fire defense roofing, Stanford, Oakdale, and for roof coating, Sierra del Oro dampeners, for south fence, Oakdale and Stanford fencing for safety. Other project considerations may include high efficiency windows and down the road possible solar projects. So at this point in time, I'll ask Andrew to kind of share with the board what we're looking as far as financials and how much we have to spend and how we're looking to spend some of that money. And then we'll continue the conversation with Mr. Campolo, kind of sharing some of his insight of what he sees from a director standpoint of the priorities that he may have. So Andrew.
Yeah. So funding wise, we still haven't settled with the insurance company on the amount of money we're going to be receiving from the loss of the Feather Falls facility. It should be around $2.5 million to $3 million. But again, that's still being argued on every fine point by our consultants and the insurance company. We have the $900,000 from the Bird Street sale. And then we also have redeveloper fee funds of about $850,000 and developer fee money of about $530,000. With the developer fee money, that's very highly earmarked, has to be for very, very specific types of projects. Typically, it's going to be parking lots and traffic-based projects. So that's what we're using for the walkway along Mesa and also for the Ophir turnaround. And that's what we're looking for. We're using using all of that balance for the Stanford Avenue parking lot project, which will probably also consume the RDA money as well. The Stanford parking lot project is something that we've been looking at for a long time. The parking lot itself sort of floats. So every year it crushes in. There's very bad drainage off the hill that goes directly underneath the parking lot. So it'd have to be excavated and re-engineered. And so we're looking at about $1 million project to replace that parking lot. We're hopeful that as we do that, we'll be able to find hopefully some ways to ease the woes of parking and traffic in that parking lot, because it's a very, very congested parking lot. But again, that'll be as we get into it. Also, when we talk about Feather Falls and Bird money, RDA money, and developer fee money, these are all funds that can only be spent on facility projects. Those cannot be spent on anything else. because of the way they arrived in the district and what they're for. Some of the other projects that we have on the list, like district cabling. District cabling is going to be paid for partially by ESSER funds and partially by E-rate funds, which are federal technology dollars. And there's some other ones that are ESSER. ESSER is a CARES Act money that we get from the federal and state government for COVID response. So things like the HVAC replacement would be something that ESSER could pay for. And the central eating structure, we have an approval to do that. And for every one of these projects, you have to go to the state government and ask for specific approval before you can even begin talking about the project. So those are already approved and we can move forward on them. And there are a number of projects in here with a variety of different funding sources, like CalShape is its own special funding source. CalShape is a program that for the HVAC side of it, right now it's not a replacement of HVAC systems, but it's a review and upgrading certain parts, adding CO2 detectors. And we're going to be bringing that to the board to approve the grant at the next board meeting. If you recall the CalShape with the fixtures where you all had to sign that document, we'll have another one at the next board meeting for you to all sign. We're hopeful that CalShape is going to have a phase 2, where now they have gone through and done all of the work they can to optimize the systems in place. We're hopeful the state of California will continue down that path and say, hey, now it's time to go look at the ones we've looked at and pull out the old ones and start replacing them. Because across the district, we have many, many systems that need to be replaced. With our phase 1 with ESSER, that's going to take out 9 systems. And, you look at the energy savings on those, and that's about a 25% savings per unit. And some of them are quite large. Most of those are at Ophir. There's a big giant one on the primary building at Central and a couple of smaller units at Wyandotte. So we're hopeful that CalShape will start to really be an investment by the state. It's been something that Governor Newsom has talked about quite a bit, to provide a means to replace some of these old clunker HVAC systems. And Spencer did talk a little bit about solar. I've talked to this board about solar many times. As we're beginning to finally replace a lot of these old HVAC systems, it's finally starting to become time to start talking about, hey, now that we've reduced the amount of energy we're wasting, it's time to look at what the possibilities are for producing energy. But until some of these HVACs got replaced, it didn't make any sense to build a solar panel to power a HVAC system from 1975. It didn't equate. So we're hopeful as we get into the next phase of HVAC, whether it's through ESSER funding or other funding or through some of these, the Feather Falls or bird money or whatever that's going to be, that's probably going to be part of that conversation. The solar and HVAC will probably come together. But there's some funds available. And the hard part is, we have a lot of really worthy ideas and plans. But construction has absolutely exploded in price. Some of these projects that just a couple of years ago would have cost half what they are going to cost now. So it's, we want to make sure we have priorities, but we also want to make sure that we're not over promising either, because the money doesn't grow like the inflation is growing at this point.
Thank you, Andrew. And some of the things that Andrew's also looking at when we're looking at HVAC units and possible future solar plans and things like that, there's a lot of programs right now through the state and through PG&E and different programs where as you replace some of these things, you can get very low interest loans and things like that. And through our savings of new efficiencies, it basically pays for itself because like Andrew said, what some of our bigger units are from 1975, which are almost 50 years old, and the efficiency is very, very low. Therefore, we're paying a great deal amount in electricity to keep our schools heated and cooled. I have asked Andrew just to give the board a little bit of perspective of how much we're spending per month on electricity. I'll go ahead and turn that back to Andrew real quick.
Yeah, sure. So to answer Spencer's last comment, last month we spent about $38,000 on PG&E. 2 years ago, our annual was $400,000. So we're that's a cost that's just exploding across the district. As we all know, the many struggles PG&E has had, and the rates for PG&E continued to skyrocket. Stepping back to the first thing Spencer was talking about finance. This has not been a district that has had a lot of experience or maybe even tolerance for borrowing. So that's something that we're going to have to explore as a board. The options and the many things that we can do as far as different types of financing. But those will be things that we'll have to bring and study and all come to understand together, because it has not been part of the fabric of Oroville City Elementary in the past to have borrowing of really any sort beyond the bonds and stuff we did, but it hasn't really been something we've done before. So don't freak out, we'll bring it and we'll talk about it, and it's not a done deal. And just know, there's some different options, and we're going to look at all of our different options that we have. And also know that we're also working on, in every different vein of project that's on here, we're looking for partners and public funding to help pay for these things. For example, fire abatement isn't on here, but we did a bunch of fire abatement work up at Ophir, and that came through Cal Fire, and I think they brought in the California Conservation Corps. We didn't pay for any of that. You're going to have at your next board meeting a packet about an assessment done at ISHI for its wildfire assessment by our insurance company that they paid for. And so I took that and immediately turned around and went to my contacts who we've been partnering with to do Ophir and said, hey, how can we make this happen with your support? Trying to kind of work together with Cal Fire and Butte Fire and other agencies to see if we can find ways to make this affordable for us, and also have it done in a way that's going to be complete and done by fire professionals who can say, hey, this is what really should be done to fire protect your sites. ISHI is the one that the insurance really picked up on because it has such a huge wilderness area of chaparral, lots of oak and things that are overgrown. So that's maybe not on the list, but that's going to be something that's going to change the look of that school pretty quickly as we begin to pull that back. And as you drive up Olive Highway, you'll see a lot of what the county is doing, taking out trees on either side, all these overgrown trees, and you're looking going, hey, I didn't realize there was a fence there. So you're going to have to expect that that's coming to ISHI as well. Wildfire mitigation couldn't be a hotter topic. And there is some funding out there. So we're going to be pursuing that to see what we can do to bring that in.
Thank you, Andrew. And now I'd like to ask Jim to kind of come forward and share with the board some of his ideas for some of our current projects, and then some of and Jim, I'd then like you to focus on some of the things that we need to do as you are one of our professionals and experts in this field, of things that you see from a day-to-day standpoint of things that we need to do to maintain our district. Because we know sometimes when we just let certain projects go and not, it costs us more and more money as more and more issues come about. So if you just kind of share with the board, and then we'll open it up to the board to kind of discuss and ask questions and go from there. So Jim.
Good evening, Jim Campolo, Director of Maintenance and Facilities. Let me think, because a lot of the things that I had thought that would improve the environment of the school district on the future projects list. One of the things I feel we really need to keep up with is, for quite a while, we were able to stay ahead of the roof leaks and the problems from that side of maintenance. but that becomes increasingly harder without having the substitute crews in the summertime and being able to split up run work crews. And that's why you see several Stanford, Oakdale, and Ophir on the list to potentially be done by a roofing contractor. These, in my opinion, are the three current bad roofs in the district, because you can see after, 25 years, the sun is eaten through and you can see the fiberglass and everything else in the roof coatings. And that's why I put those on the list. The play shades that you mentioned on the list, it's primarily because of the students. They get out there and they're in the direct sunlight, and it's uncomfortable for them. And I think this way it'd get them more out and moving around on the equipment if we have some way of diverting the sun away, because it's just, they're surrounded by asphalt and sun. And so that's why I feel that those would be important. Asphalt ceiling, you talked about Central, or not Central, but you talked about Stanford. So I think that's been talked about enough. The asphalt ceiling that I have on my mind is in front of Central and select areas at Ophir, because the cracks are starting. So it'd be a matter of getting there, clean out the cracks, get it sealed up, and get us, 5 to 10 more years on a coating, as opposed to them just slowly degrading from the water coming through. HVAC, I think that's going to be a definite benefit to us because of the comfort of the students and the staff, and the amount of time we have to spend just keeping it going to get it through to the next problem that it has. So I think that's going to be important.
Thank you, Jim. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the board that, and I do want to, number one, thank Jim for putting together the majority of this list. He sent this to me, and I added a few items, but he put together most of this, and we appreciate his crew and him for all the work that they do within our district, and we're grateful for it. And so, Jim, if you don't have any other comments, I'll kind of open it up to the board to ask questions, start to share their ideas of what priorities they might have. And then I will share kind of some of my ideas of what I'd like to see. But we'll start with the board first.
Okay, trustees, does anyone want to go first to share your thoughts or have questions? Jessica?
I just want to carry on with what Mr. Campolo said, that health and safety is the biggest concern. And so when we're dealing with the harsh sun rays, these poor little kids, I would agree that a shade sail would benefit a lot of students in many different ways, from the bus stops to the playgrounds. In addition to getting ahead of, like Mr. Campolo said, of the maintenance of the asphalt and the roofs to prevent future problems. So I can agree with his top priority items.
Thank you. Sandra or Bill?
I would like to, this is Bill Grown, I'd like to weigh in. I believe that I have more of a philosophy than a specific project. I believe that we should take the approach as a board that our number one priority is the health, welfare, and safety of our students and our staff. And that we need to first make sure that our buildings are warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and dry. And I think Mr. Campolo would probably be the best person to decide what is the priority of these projects. I mean, I watch a lot of DIY TV, but I don't know the first thing about what really needs to be done at the schools, what is the biggest project, because what might seem simple as a dry rot problem might be an entire roof system that needs to be replaced. And Mr. Campolo, I think, is much more better suited to decide what that is. So I think if we set a philosophy or a policy, it should be just as simple as that, warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and dry year round. and as far as the play structures and things like that, I think that those fit in there as well. But maintenance and adding a sale, I think, are different things. I mean, it just, to me, it strikes me as different. And I'm not sure that you can compare one to be a higher priority than the other, because they could be equal priority. So I think, we probably just have to have classifications of those, of what we can afford and what is our biggest priority. We cannot afford to ignore the maintenance of our district. We could have catastrophic failure of something that could cost us millions of dollars that we just don't have if we don't take care of it now. So again, I'm going to go back to putting all of this on Mr. Campolo. That way we have somebody to point a finger at if it all goes bad.
I will accept that. Just to give an idea, it sounds like, we're talking about a lot of big projects, but we're also talking about small projects. And one of the small projects is something as simple as retiling the restrooms at Issue staff bathroom. The tile needs to be replaced, but I cannot see paying somebody to come do it when I can cut one of the guys loose for a week. They can rip everything out, put it back down, and cost us a fraction of the price. And that is scheduled, depending what happens over spring break. I was going to try to get at least one done then, but if nothing happens during spring break, it's going to be a summertime project. Quick explanation on the Central Wing 2 lawn. That lawn is between wings 2 and 3 at Central. There's 4 trees there. It's a great place for the kids to be able to sit out, read, breakout sessions from the classrooms, calm down moments, whatever it is they need. But because of the way it was put in, the roots for the trees are sticking through. And so you have tripping hazards, mowing hazards. And the lawn is actually going to be paid through grant money, because last year I put a grant in for that to smooth everything off and replant to where the students can come out, sit, do the reading, do whatever it is that they want to do without there being such a safety hazard there. One of the priorities I think that maintenance is going to tackle is the overhang on the backside of the multipurpose room at Central. I've watched that slowly degrade over the years, and that's going to have to be, depending on how many people we have, but put the maintenance crew on it. Half of it's going to have to, be stripped away. Dry rot's going to have to be repaired. But then again, we could pay somebody to do that, but that's what we're there for. I mean, if we can do these other things while the HVACs are being replaced and the play areas are being dealt with, I think that's an effective use of our time and the district's money.
And Jim has quite an extensive experience doing this, and certainly a good reason why we're doing this is to hear Bill say, hey, we trust our professionals to do it. And as we move forward with these projects, what I'm kind of hearing in my mind thinking is that Andrew and I and the cabinet will work with Jim and his crew to kind of prioritize and then strategize what our maintenance crew can do within district, and then what we're going to outsource, and then look at our budget and prioritize, what we can do effectively and efficiently with our own people, and where we're going to have to maybe spend more money and outsource it. And so that's what I'm hearing. And board, is that kind of how you're feeling?
Sandra, did you have anything to add?
Not really. I mean, my dream is to have a nice, sparkly, new looking, facilities that people from out of town are going to look at us and say, hey, that's a beautiful building. I would love to have my kids go there. But our priorities are such that safe and secure establishments are more important. And those people that frequent that area every single day know what needs to be done. So I agree with you all. They can make the priorities. And I look forward to hearing what Spencer has to say.
Jessica has her hand up. Jessica?
Yeah, I I think that that's the way I'd like to approach it, Spencer, is if we have in-house knowledge, skills, and abilities, that should be the first place that we go to utilize the projects that our staff can do. And then prioritizing from there the professionalism of other things that are a little out of our reach. That makes the most sense to me, and also puts our staff in our district to work and keeps that money circulating within, you know, our community of what we need to get done. And yeah, so I agree with that, Spencer, that the priority should lie with our maintenance crew, with their abilities and their skills, and then follow suit after.
And I agree
outsourcing.
as well. Thank you. I agree as well with what everyone has said. I do trust your expertise, and I trust that you will make the best decision for our students and our staff for their safety. I have a couple questions though. You mentioned not having sub crews in the summer at one point. You were talking about the roofing leaks, I think. What did you mean by that?
Typically, when I was a maintenance technician in the summertime, we would take all of our substitute custodians. We'd have a list. Typically, we would take 6 to 8 of them, and we'd bring them to maintenance for the summertime, and that's where we'd get most of our work done.
Oh.
And at any given time, you'd see one crew on one roof completely recoding it, while another crew was fixing dry rot on portables. Over the last few years, that's pretty much evaporated. Last year, I had one substitute that could only be there half the time, and I had to take it because, you know, the way we have it set up is in a perfect summer, we have all these extra people. One of my technicians is half grounds, half maintenance. I pull him to maintenance, teach somebody to drive a mower, and that way he can use his maintenance experience to help the maintenance crews or run a crew. And one of the problems I think that we have is hiring substitute custodians. That's, you know, it's bodies, it's people that have aptitude. And that's where we used to get a lot of our work done in the summertime. And that's why it's just more difficult now, because while the walk was going in on Mesa, we had 3 toilets, 2 sinks, and partitions put in at Central. Our guys were doing that along with the horseshoe. So we have big things going on through a contractor, but in between doing work orders every day and keeping the HVAC going and the plumbing going and all that, the guys are trying to get the big projects out of the way too. So it just sometimes just comes down to time.
Well, and it sounds like, Jim, that over the last couple of summers, we just haven't had the workforce that we've had in previous years. Is that an accurate assumption?
Correct.
And so maybe I can work with you and CSEA and look at what we can do to improve our recruitment and maybe look at ways to incentivize that. I know the last couple of summers have been tough because of COVID. Maybe that's a factor, but maybe there's other factors that we need to look at to improve that, because I think our in-house staff is a lot cheaper than outsourcing it for a lot of these jobs. And so maybe that's something that we can look at.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you. Another question I had, Andrew, you mentioned that construction has exploded in price and that it's a couple of years ago would have been half. Is that a trend that you see that will continue, or is there a potential that maybe some construction expenses may go down at some point, that we would want to prioritize projects based on that?
It's hard to say how you prioritize projects based on the trend in construction, because I don't know that it's ever going to go down. Inflation in our economy is staggering, but inflation in the construction sector since the campfire has been outrageous.
Yeah.
It's been outrageous, and it's just hard to get people at whatever the cost to come and do some of these projects. So I don't know when that's going to tip, but I think we're in it for a while.
We also know that it's not just the labor costs, but the material costs, and we've seen that kind of ebb and flow a little bit. But lumber has has gone way up, and I saw it come down a little bit, and I don't know what it's doing right now, but we know that's a huge part, and cement and concrete, has really hit a premium. And so it's a mixture of both of those things and so hopefully it will stabilize. But that's hard to say. And that's why, getting in-house people and looking at other ways, maybe incentivizing it a little bit more, because it still would be a cost savings to the district. Madam President, do you have any more questions? Because I had one more thing I
I do
wanted to
not.
add.
Go ahead.
So there was one area that, two things that I wanted to talk to the board about. I think it's really clear to me tonight that we're looking at, maintenance of our buildings, the safety of our buildings, and keeping it an environment that's safe, warm, and cool for our kids, depending on the season. I had talked about, looking at painting our district, because like Sandra said, everybody likes a fresh look. And I will kind of put that on the back burner right now and work with Jim to look at what sites or what parts of sites need to be repainted, because that's kind of a routine maintenance type thing. And some of our schools have been painted more recently than others. And so I'll keep that on the list, but that won't be a priority from my vantage point, at least at this time. But I will also say that, a lot of parts of our schools, look good, and our facades are looking, better and better, but we'll look for, those projects as they come up. And the other thing I wanted to talk to the board about is Oakdale and Stanford fencing for safety. The reason I chose Oakdale and Stanford is because that is where, in the 4 years that I've been here, where we've had students that have, for lack of a better word, left or escaped our campuses. And we do not want our campuses to be where it looks like we're totally fenced because we're trying to keep people out. We want people to come join us. But I'm working with Jim and even a contractor has looked at it with us, of how we can fortify some of the areas of our campuses to ensure that it makes it much more difficult for our students, especially our younger students, to leave our campuses when they want to bolt. And so we wouldn't be totally surrounding our entire campuses of those two campuses with new wrought iron fences, but we're looking at some of the current fencing issues that we have. Some of them are 3 feet tall, and we would be replacing them with 6 feet tall fences. We would be looking at changing some of the configurations of the fencing as far as gates and things like that, and looking at the cost of what a totality to kind of put in some of this fencing, so we can kind of look at the feasibility of some of these projects as from an expenditure standpoint. Jim, did you want to add anything to that? And I noticed then we have.
I had something to add on that. The fencing is something that, as a safety committee, the district has recommended when we've had a safety assessments done for things outside of wildfire, but things like, guests on campus with questionable intent. Our fencing, because some of our schools are very, very wide open, like a ranch, like a big ranch. The ability for people to walk onto campus on the front of those campuses is something that has been a priority for, the thrust of the safety recommendations over the last, the entire time I've been here. Because it's something that kids can get easily on and off, especially it's the front of Stanford and the front of Oakdale. It's easy for kids to get off that school site and into a busy road really quick, or for somebody to get into that campus really quickly on the front side. So that I just want to put those 2 cents in, that this has been on the radar as something that has been a pretty big priority. It's just been a very expensive priority, but we do have some money now. And when I think about safety, I don't think you get much more directly into safety than than a big iron fence in front of your school. I think the question becomes, it's a big iron fence in front of your school. I know Chico has them on all their schools. So it's something that we're going to have to kind of grapple with.
Jim?
Yes, I wanted to add that, big iron fence and steel, it sounds intimidating. What I have done is I've gone to Palermo School District, and I've gone to Thermalito School District, and I live in Chico, and I've been to a lot of their schools. And what my thought is to mimic what they have, because it seems to be fairly accepted and non-harsh and just kind of gentle on the eye, and it kind of makes it look nice. And just like Spencer said, it will keep the children safe because they can't get out to the streets. But at the same time, it will keep, if there's a lockdown situation, somebody would have to find another way in besides the front to get in, because that would stop that as well.
Thank you. Jessica?
Thank you for commenting, Jim. I was going to ask you that. My comment about the fencing is, does it necessarily have to be a school lot line fence, or can this fencing be scaled back in a non-harsh, maybe more aesthetic, safe way within closer to the classrooms? Because we keep talking about, we don't want people to get in or students to get out, but in the event of a safety evacuation, we need ease of use in that sense. And, putting a 6-foot tall fence at the edge of the road on Stanford Avenue, it's like, well, what if it's locked? What if, what if we need to get out in a haste? I mean, all of those things can be mitigated, but perhaps there's another way to do that without doing the entire property line, which would also lessen expenses. So that's just my comment there. And then going back to the paint issue or comment, as far as I'm concerned, in my line of business, paint is a maintenance item. It prevents dry rot, it prevents water damage, it prevents wood destroying pests, it prevents premature replacement of items, it prevents lots of other, aesthetically, all of those things. And I would trust that you have the priority list of where paint lies on those maintenance items. But in my line of business, it is a high priority. It's one of the basic, homeowner lists of things to maintain.
I can answer those two questions. I have, as far as Stanford and Oakdale go, I have a design on a map to where it's not lot line. For instance, Oakdale would be raise the kinder fence up to 6-foot privacy, the same as Wyandotte has. And the actual wrought iron would run along the edge of the lawn and the front concrete where the kids get picked up. So you'd still have your 3-foot along the hallways and such, but the actual wrought iron would be pushed forward to where they still have an open area. They can utilize the grass, but it separates outside from inside. And kind of the same for Stanford. You have a lot of 3-foot wrought iron there, but the new wrought iron will only block off in between the classrooms and stop that kind of travel. As far as the paint goes, I do have a list of the dry rot problems throughout the district, and I keep that list close to my heart, because whenever there's time, we're still working on that. It's not like, we're just letting it sit there and waiting for somebody else to come do it. It's a matter of time and people. And when we can, we go out and we'll do a wall, or we'll do skirting, or, and then of course it gets painted the colors we have now, which at some point, maybe the colors will change, but it makes it to where it doesn't look like we were ever there. And we are working at it slowly.
Do you have a comment on that? Okay. All right, Sandra.
Hi, yeah. So I just want to second Jessica's comment about designing fencing for safety of ingress and egress in troublesome situations. Are we talking, when we state that we're looking at wrought iron fencing, are we talking about the same fencing that's like at Central? Because that's all aluminum, which is significantly cheaper than actual iron.
We were looking at iron like the other school districts have, and like what's in front of Stanford and Wyandotte, or Stanford and Oakdale currently, just taller.
Okay.
Jessica, did you have another comment or question? Your hand's still up.
Sorry, no, I'll take it off.
All right. Bill, did you have anything to add? Any questions, comments?
No, not at this time.
Madam President, I don't believe the district has any more comments or thoughts for you. So
Okay.
we can move on to the next item unless there's any other questions that are out there. Again, like to thank our maintenance department and Jim for being here tonight and giving us a lot of insight into some of the needs of our district. And I feel a lot more comfortable moving forward. I feel like we have informed the board of what we're currently doing and some of the needs of our district, and I feel like we definitely have a direction now of our priorities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll move on to the discipline update.
Go ahead and turn on your microphone. But I just wanted to share with the board that I have asked Janet, as we've heard from our last several board meetings, there's a lot of questions and concerns about discipline and what the district is doing. And so I have asked Janet to take about 10 or 15 minutes to kind of share what she has been working on. She's done some surveys and different things. We're working with the different schools. Would like to share that we've had, since our last board meeting, I've been to a couple of staff meetings where we've talked about discipline. We've had a district-wide special education meeting where we talked specifically about discipline and looking for ideas and solutions and things of that nature. And so we've been busily working on this, working with our stakeholders and especially our teachers and staff that have brought some of the concerns to us. And now I'll turn the time over to Janet to kind of take it. Again, I've asked her to take 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll take some questions from the board.
Okay, so from the last board meeting, I had presented data, and when you looked at the data, it looked like things were, the behaviors were starting to go on a downward trend. And the question was, we had some staff that were very concerned with the behaviors that were going on, and it seemed like there's a disconnect. So the goal was to go back and talk to the staff and see if we could figure out what was going on. So I did surveys to all the schools. I ended up with all of the schools responding except for Wyandotte. And they didn't get the survey out to the staff. So staff didn't get it completed. So it is going to go out to the staff this week, and we'll look and see what they have to say. And I will communicate with you to the board if I see anything different than what I talk about tonight, if the trends are any different or if they kind of follow the same trends. Okay. So the very first thing I wanted to know was, because we were saying the data wasn't looking like it was matching up. So we did ask, how consistently do they think the data is being put into into their Swiss systems at the different school sites? So you can see here that when we look at the numbers that you have quite a few that do submit and get their data in, but there are quite a few that do it about half the time or they don't get to it. And the reason for that buried, time usually is always the number one reason that they don't get to it. But what we did find is that is why we have a disconnect with what we saw and what got reported and what we're hearing. So there was a disconnect because our data is not reflecting what really happened in our Swiss system. So then I asked the schools to just give me an overall rating on how do they think their PBIS system, their behavior system, is working at their school site. And when you look at the results here, again, we will not see Wyandotte tonight. And then Ishii, due to last December's board meeting, we did a survey with them that was a little different. So rather than resurveying them, I did pull in a couple slides that I'll share at the end, but they were phrased differently than what we did with this group because the task was slightly different. I was trying to get different information. So we take a look at this. And one is a system not working on the left-hand side, and to the right, the system's working well. So the more to the right you see is what we're hoping to see in these slides right here. So what you see is the certificated staff and then the classified. We asked both groups if they could report to us on how they thought things were working, because they end up with different perspectives. One spends more time maybe outside and sees the hallways and the general area. Teachers, of course, are inside the classrooms more. So we do have a slight difference, but kind of same pattern. You look at Oakdale, we did not get enough from classified. So the survey was anonymous. So if we had less than 5 responses, I'm not reporting it out because then people will start to figure out who said what. So we look at Oakdale and you're going to see between 3 and 4, they seem to think things are working kind of okay. We go to Ophir, and at Ophir, what you're going to see is classified and certificated, not too dramatically different. Most of them felt like things were okay in the middle of the road, which is 3. If I'm going too fast, slow me down, please. Okay. Then we look at Stanford. And at Stanford, what you're going to see is there are more concerns. So if 3 is things are, middle of the road, they're okay. You look to the left, you're going to see that they had a little bit more response. This school had the most response of all the schools, and it's also the largest school too. So when we do look at their data, we do know we're getting good input from everybody, or a variety. The next thing I asked is if we are consistently applying the rules, because consistency at school sites makes a big difference on how well your discipline system works. So really what you're looking for is the blue would be, yes, we are consistently doing it. And you'll see a slight difference. Central certificated, about 40% of a yes. And we have central classified at 20%. So they see a little bit more inconsistency going on. We go to the next slide and then we take a look. Whoops. Sorry. Go to the next slide and we look at Oakdale. Again, we didn't get the classified on Oakdale, but you do have a large portion of the teachers saying that, yes, we think we're being very consistent on our implementation of rules. So they're over 50% of a yes. They went up to 55.6. We look at Ophir. Ophir strong with the teachers, 60% yes, we are consistent in our following of the rules and applying it throughout the campus. The classified look at it and they see it at a 27% yes, but then there sometimes was strong. So Stanford did not have as strong. They had 23% teachers saying yes, and then 11% of the classified saying, yes, we consistently apply the rules. The one thing I'm going to say about Stanford when I've been there is he does have a lot of different people that do recess. Like they come in for one recess, first grade, and then they go and somebody else comes for second. And looking at the wide variety of people that help participate in recess duty, I can see where consistency could be part of the issue, just because you have so many different people coming and going. Then, the next question that I had asked was, which behavior is the hardest to manage in the classroom? And I asked that because I know safety was starting to get an issue and how bad and prevalent it was. So we do find 3 things. We find defiance, disruption, and disrespect are the 3 main items that are the hardest to manage in the classroom. So if you look at Central, you're going to find that their number 1 was disrespect and number 2 was inappropriate language. That's another common theme that we do see throughout the schools. Oakdale was finding that inappropriate language, and they found that the other one was disrespect and a tie with disruption. So,
Janet,
yeah.
if you could go back to that slide real
Yes,
quick.
I can.
It looks like on Oakdale, 44% is the light blue, which is defiance, versus the dark blue, which is inappropriate language.
Oh, sorry, you're right. You're correct. I apologize. So yeah, defiance is a common theme at all of the schools, I think. Ofer is finding, they had said that with their certificated, 40% was defiance, 33% with the classified. And then they both agreed that the next one was disruption with 30 and 33 from the different groups. So disruption and defiance. Stanford found that they thought the most difficult behaviors were defiance and disruption, and their classified had the same. They just felt a little more strongly about those two. Okay, so again, consistently throughout the district, the issues were defiance, disrespect, and disruption. Next question is the playground. So we wanted to know if there's a lot of physical issues on the playground, or what kind of issues and concerns were going on the playground. And what we find is we find that a lot of physical fighting is going on. So if you look at Central, defiance is definitely their largest issue if you look at it from the certificated. And you would find that bullying is the next one. The classified, I've never seen this before, completely evenly. That was the most unique I've ever seen. I looked at it 3 times. It's like, really? So anyway, then we go to Oakdale. And again, we're getting the same theme, and that is defiance out on the playground. And the tide is the impulsivity and the fighting. And fighting is definitely fighting or physical. We see a lot of. Go to Ofer. This was interesting because at Ofer, 20% of the certificated had said that physical aggression, which can be fighting. And then you go over to the classified and they put it at 58%. So they see that as a major concern. They see a lot more of it. And it could be they're out around campus more, whereas your classroom teachers are in the classroom for the bulk of the day. But they both agree that their top 2 are the language that, it's the defiance and the fighting. They both agree with that. Our next one is Stanford, and Stanford is indicating that their largest concern is the physical contact. And then with them, their next one is fighting. So very similar, physical contact and fighting, a lot of issues at Stanford on that. And your classified agree that the physical contact's an issue, and they also have bullying as one of the issues. Then we're going to go to issue for a minute. And this, again, we asked this completely different because I was attacking the problem differently at that time. So on this chart here, it's a little confusing to read, but what I'm asking is, of the different behaviors that they were putting, that they put into Aries and they identify and see, which behaviors do they see the most issues with? So with inappropriate language, some teachers, if they had dark blue on the far left, would say never. The light brown means rarely did they see inappropriate language. Sometimes the gray is sometimes inappropriate language. The brown, which is the largest in inappropriate language, is often, and then there's constantly. So they're going to see inappropriate language as often and constantly is where they see that most often. If you looked at off task, then you would see that off task is often and sometimes and often they have off task issues. So again, you look at disrespect, again, that one's very often. That's a common trend at all the schools. And the out of class without permission, we didn't really pull that up at the other schools, although Stanford did indicate that they had some issues with that. And if you look at the disrespect, again, that we see at all the schools, they too are experiencing often with disrespect. Okay, moving on, Ishi. On this one here, we looked at their passing times because sometimes the issues do change when it's passing time. This chart is a little different. The far left means it's a big problem. If it's a number 1, it's a big problem, and number 5, it's not really a problem. So disrespect to adults, big problem. And then you scoot over to does not follow adult directions, big problem. That's their 2 big problems that they're identifying on campus, along with fights. So their top 3 would be the fights, the following adult direction, and disrespect. Okay, and on the last one, this one is just overall, how did their behavior system work? And rather than a scale of 1 to 5, they did 1 to 10. I changed it to the others because I thought I gave them, it's just too much. It's easier if it was 1 to 5, but this was my first rendition. And what you see is that definitely we don't have any 9s or 10s, but it kind of varies a little. Okay. All right, so I did ask 2 questions. One of the questions I asked is, what would be your 2 top suggestions of how to resolve the issue? And at any one school, I didn't see any patterns or trends. But what I did see is over the district, we ended up getting almost the same things at every single school. So I took the pattern and trend to be district-wide rather than school by school. So 1 is consequences, wanting to see more consequences for some of the behaviors. 2 was parent training. They want to see if we could help parents with kids have had a tough time these last couple of years in COVID and coming back. They want to help the kids with the socialization, help the kids with being respectful, and they want to help the parents with it too, because they too have had challenges as well. More staffing to support supervision. This came out very loud and clear. All of them felt that we need more support in that area. Consistent input into SWIS. They recognize that in order for us to make effective decisions, we have to base it off of good data, or else it's bad decisions. We need consistency in implementation of routines and rules. And so every school gave some comment about how they see the inconsistency of, maybe one person really follows this school rule, another one ignores it and walks right by the kids when they're doing it, and they need consistency. Train teachers with physically violent students. So I got to tell you, I did ask a professional development question, and it was like, no more, and yes, please. But the reason I put this one down is this was really looking at, we are getting more and more kids that are more physically violent. And, what do you do with that kid? Because 10 years ago, we may not have seen that much in a classroom. And now they want to know, how do we handle it? What's the best way? I mean, they all know our go-tos and establish relationships, consistent rules, all of that. But when you get to a student who's so volatile and goes from 0 to 10 really fast, how do you deal with that? Because at that point, you're not in proactive, you're in reactive mode. Okay, alternative recess. I saw this on several, not every, but on several, where they're starting to look at maybe the kids that can't handle recess go at a different time. Or maybe the kids that can't handle the recess go into another room and it's a small room where they can do quiet games or something like that. But they're looking at ways to find the frequent flyers that continually are having problems on campus. How do we help them be successful? We know they need physical activity because they got to burn off energy. But we also know they're not being successful in the big group. So several are looking and want to explore ways for that to work. They even though we have been able to hire 2 more educational therapists, the problem is our kids have so many needs coming out of COVID and our high ACES score, it's just they need more. They just to get at the needs of the kids. Smaller class size last year in what they bring up is last year when we did the AB schedule, significant difference when it was a small group of kids. We didn't have behaviors at all, did we? Some support at getting detention set up because some some need consequences, but they don't have the staffing to enforce or support a detention. And that would be something that could go before a suspension, and it could be a way to help with some of the language or some of the other things that we're seeing. And then the last one, I'm seeing this on a lot of them too, and we know it, but I just want to reiterate it, is that teachers are exhausted. They're taking in extra kids in their classroom. They've got kids here today, gone tomorrow. They're trying to figure out, who learned what. They're trying to pitch in because these kids have a lot more emotional social needs this year than they have in prior years. Some of them are kind of because they haven't had all the experience at school between their problem solving and their socialization skills. It's just a lot more intense for the teachers to manage that in the classroom. And so really tired, so really hard to gear up and keep going when they're depleted. And I think that's why the outcry for more supervision, more counselors, more support. And that's just because they're working their hardest and they're trying their hardest, but it's been a year. And I think there is not one person in this room that would not agree with that. This has been far more challenging even than last year was. So that's it. That's the results. That's what we heard from the teachers and classified as well.
Thank you so much for the comprehensive data. I think it's more reflective of what we've been hearing about the last few months from our teachers. So we know that there's an issue. We have the data that shows it, and a lot of suggestions on how to resolve the behavior issues. So what is the action plan based on this data?
Well, right now, since this was 2 weeks from the last board meeting, we've got the data. So now the next step is going to be, what are we going to do with it? Now, we had Issue who was ahead because they started there sooner. They have been meeting with their staff and they have been coming up with some plans. Like they knew they had a lot of issues between, I think it was 7th and 8th period. So they tried a different passing strategy. It didn't work, but they tried it, which that's the big thing, is they're analyzing it and they're figuring out how they're going to work. Now they've got another plan that they're working on. And so they are meeting and talking and working with how are they going to solve this problem. And I'll meet with cabinet on Friday because nobody has seen this data because it really just all came in and it was due on Friday. So this is fresh.
Yeah.
So now our next step is to create an action plan of what are we going to do that's going to help support and make things better.
Wonderful.
And some of the action plans will be district-wide because some of them are district-wide issues. But 7th period passing is not an issue at Wyandotte because there is no such thing, So there's going to be some things that are very unique to some of the campuses and their unique challenges that they have. And then some of them are going to be, things that we do as an umbrella over all the district. Now, and I've started to share some of the ideas, like when I had a staff meeting yesterday at ISHE, I shared some things that, as a district, we're looking to, when we look at consequences and things like that, looking at ways that we can better enforce and create more consistency with that within our schools and go from there. I'm also looking at some other ideas that I'll be sharing with the board and as those materialize, but we will, as we move forward, come together or bring to the board a comprehensive plan for the district with nuances based on the individual needs of the school sites.
Wonderful. I can't see if the board members have hands up, but does any board member have a comment or question? Sandra.
Yeah, so I would really like it if Janet could send that data to us in an email. Since it wasn't shared, it was awfully hard to see. My first question is, Central Middle School was supposed to have basketball put back in place, and I was wondering if maybe that structured physical activity helped with their disciplinary data, and if that was something that maybe we need to implement at the other schools to have more structured physical activity time.
So we did have basketball, but we did it like we've done in other years because of COVID, right when we were starting to go into a more organized basketball league, we had a uptick of COVID, and so we kind of backed off of it. And then when we were able to kind of move back into athletics, we worked with the Parks and Recs and our after school program to offer that. So we did offer it, but not as extensive as we had hoped this year. But as we move into next year, we are looking to have more after school alternatives for our kids, including athletics.
Thank you. Jessica?
Are there going to be structured physical education opportunities for the elementary school students?
So as far as like after school sports, we haven't planned anything at this point in time. We have looked at some, there may be some more opportunities for after school opportunities, but as far as in school opportunities for athletics and things like that, we certainly can take a look at bringing in some more organized games and more organized activities that might help with the behavior. But I will share a great thing that I saw this past week. Kathy Petak, who is our new principal at Wyandotte, is an avid runner, and she brought in a running program that they're doing that does kind of a scan every time they have a badge, and it gets scanned every time they run a lap. And so that's really helping kids, have a real purpose during their recess, and getting more the athletic side involved in Wyandotte. And that's something that I thought, wow, that might be give Wyandotte about a month to kind of see how that goes. And then, but that is something, when I saw that, I thought, wow, that's a program that we could implement very easily throughout the district. And so we are looking at programs like that to help our kids have more of a purpose and during unstructured play.
Okay, thank
Sandra,
you.
do you have another question? Or Jessica, you both have your hands up still.
Sandra, do you have anything else? No.
I was just really very interested in getting a copy of the data from Janet, if that was possible. Thank you.
Absolutely. I will get that to you by tomorrow.
And I'd like to see the Wyandotte results too, once they do theirs.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
I had a question. I was able to sort of type along what Janet was explaining. And so I guess my note here that I have is, what is the consequence for bad language in the middle schools? What is their consequence right now for that?
I would need to open up my computer because I just met with Central Middle, and we went over that of what we were doing in the cafeteria and on the playground when that happened. And I think it was a warning. Actually, you know what? You're right here. It was a warning, and then there was detention, I think. Is that it? I meant Ishii. Renee, we just went over that with campus supervisors, no? So each school has their own consequences of how they've developed their behavior systems. So it would be school by school. I do know over at Ishii, I have been working with Renee, and that has come up quite a bit on what to do and how to handle language. I think what we agreed on was a warning and then a detention with that in the cafeteria. Now, I don't know what that's like in the classroom. It was a cafeteria issue.
So more of like a free space issue, right? They're sort of like on a release, they're on a relief, they're on a letdown, and then, their age really kind of starts to come out among their peers.
Yeah.
So you keep saying, you're talking to them about what to do, but what has been done previously, or what's currently? So currently,
So at the beginning of the So at the beginning of the year, every school creates their own PBIS behavior plan. And so they decide school-wide what the rules are, what the consequences are. And then the classroom teacher works with their students and they develop school rules or classroom rules and classroom consequences. So it's very different based on the schools and how they have decided the different behaviors are to be dealt with.
Mhm. I don't know, maybe this is completely wrong, but a sense of uniformity might be nice. And I know that doesn't really matter school by school because these students aren't really interacting school by school, but when the problem or the consequence is clearly defined and it is made very clear and aware and does not falter in any form from one classroom to the next, perhaps that might be something students can be held accountable for, or can hold themselves a little bit more accountable for. My next question was, are we doing anything currently for parent training?
We have, for parent training this year, we do have 3 trainings that are coming up. One was suicide prevention. We tried, and I can't think of the next 2 at the moment. I would have to go look at the flyer that's being created for it. Last year, we tried to do some in terms of how to support your child academically at home during COVID. We did not get good response. We didn't get good attendance. We did run about 3 parent trainings last year with little results. And then this year, we're going to start in March. So there'll be one in March, April, and May. One of them is suicide prevention. Another one I know we were working on was going to be social media, communicating and using electronics well in social media appropriateness.
Mhm.
That was another topic. And I can't think of the third one.
SST 504s.
Was that the third one? SST 504s. Oh, yes.
And it-
Kimberly and I are facilitating that one. I should have remembered that one.
So
and
if we're going into these parent trainings, and you said last year there was not a good turnout based on the avenue that they were presented, how are we going to change that presentation this time around to get?
Go ahead, I apologize.
That's okay, to get more attendees or to really have more of an effect or a way that we can connect with parents?
So last year, what we did is we took a poll to kind of find out what the need was. And we did it based on that. And when we published it and put it out at the different school sites and had the schools advertise it. So what we think will be different this year is twofold. One, we are going to be hopefully doing this in person, which is why we've held off to do it in the spring, is to try and do it in-person training. We may be able to, I'm very optimistic that March will be a better month for us. But if not, we will still do it. But then what we're going to do is we are going to really see if the schools with their parent liaison could really kind of target and get some parents to come. We're going to lean on our 2 bilingual aides that do translations and help support 504s and special ed. We're also going to lean on them to help us and get a diversity in our meeting so that we can really push the Hmong and the Hispanic culture. And so we're trying to do that. We'll do a more targeted approach.
Bill, you have your hand up?
Yeah, maybe I'm thick or something, but I'm not really sure what any of that has to do with discipline. We're talking about kids fighting on campus, and we're talking about disrespectful behavior and language, and we're doing some training about suicide prevention. I'm not really sure what's the correlation between the two. So maybe I've missed something there or whatever, but I think the issue that we have is our children on campus not behaving appropriately or something. I'm not really sure. The data is good. Makes sense what I'm hearing. I'm more interested in what the plan of action is as opposed to some training that we're going to do regarding other topics that seem to be off of base of where we're headed. And the suggestion on the training, reduce it down to a 5 to 7 minute training and do it at a back to school night. That way you can get as many people as possible through there and get that information in their hands, because it's extremely important about suicide prevention and bullying and things like that. You know, I think you'll get more parents that way as opposed to trying to have them come and spend an hour or more. People just don't have that, unfortunately, have that amount of free time for those type of topics. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be negative. I just don't understand the correlation between the two.
Sandra.
There it goes. Okay, yeah, I kind of agree with Bill. Maybe 10 minutes as opposed to 7 minutes. But have the parents been appraised of their students' discipline issues as they arise? Are they getting notes home? Are they aware that there is a problem?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. The answer is yes. The answer is yes, yes, and yes. We are communicating with parents. And Jessica kind of brought up something earlier about accountability. And we're trying to, as we look at an action plan, and having been a long-term principal, you know, some of the things that we're dealing with have to do with accountability, keeping kids accountable, you know, when they're swearing, and being consistent. Now, the issue that we're running into is that when I was a principal, I would deal with a handful of issues on a given day. Now a principal is dealing with a handful of issues every hour, and we can't keep up with it. And some classes are overwhelmed with it. Some teachers are overwhelmed by it. And so but part of the reason is because we have lacked some of the consistency and some of the accountability. And so what I've asked staffs to do is to, you know, work together to be more consistent. And I'm asking our principals to be firmer with the accountability piece, because we have to make sure that the students understand that there's going to be consequences to their actions. Now, we want to do as much preventative maintenance to this and PBIS, but also we have kind of forgotten that we need to keep kids accountable. And in regards to parent training, we are looking at some parent training to help us keep their kids accountable and to have the skills needed to help them raise kids that are going to be respectful on campus. And so that, in a nutshell, and we'll bring back a lot more as far as that. But we are looking at some of the individual principals have come to me and are looking for some ongoing training that they can pull in specific families to do ongoing training that are going to look at, you know, life skills and other things, because we do have parents coming forward to us going, you have that problem at school and I have that same problem at home. And so, but that's our captive audience to bring in to some more ongoing training. And we're working with the county and looking at other programs. But I do agree that we do need to have an action plan, and we do need to move forward with something that has some uniformity. And yes, we'll have some variances based on grade levels and things like that. But this is one of those things that I'm determined to work with our staff, both classified, certificated, and administrative, to support our families, our kids, so that we can do more educating.
And we
May
can,
I respond? Oh,
go ahead.
may I please respond to Bill's comment? So on the parent training, Bill, the reason that we are doing the trainings that I had mentioned is, number one, we had noticed that we were having some more suicide concerns. And so that's why that training was scheduled. We're doing the 504 and the SST because that's part of our DOJ settlement. And in terms of addressing the needs of what we're getting from the survey, that will be we will get it planned for next fall, a parent training, but that would be based off of the surveys that we just took and finished up tonight. And that will be part of a plan moving forward. We haven't done a plan based on discipline yet, but we will. And when we do, then we will include parent training on that issue. Thank
And
you.
just to be clear, Janet, I'm not opposed to any of the training or anything like that. I just want to make sure that we are, one correlates with the other. I mean, because, as I was listening to it, it seemed like we veered off all of a sudden. Now we're over here talking about something that is not relevant to the data that was, relayed to us tonight. So, like I said, I'm not opposed to any of that. I think that you guys are professionals and you absolutely know what is necessary and what's needed. And I support that. I just didn't see the correlation between the two. And I see an immediacy to the problem that isn't going to wait till next fall, and it isn't going to wait until the following spring or anything else. I mean, if children or our staff are at risk of physical assault, we need to do something. And I don't know what that is, but I think you did an amazing job collecting the data. And I think that, in my opinion, you need some time to analyze that data and to come with a plan of what we're going to do with that data. I mean, because that's, like I say, you've done a very good job to this point. I have the utmost faith and trust in you.
I agree. I was going to say something on similar lines that I'm pleased with how far you've come with this. And I'm pleased that everyone has a voice in sharing their concerns and sharing their ideas for how to resolve the issue. There was a nice long list there. You just haven't had time to deal with it. So I would like to put it in the hands of our experts, those of you that are working with our students on a daily basis, to come up with a plan and bring it back to us and let us know how you're going to handle it. Jessica, did you have something else to add?
I'm going back to the beginning of the sports talk. It would be really nice to see that implemented in full force. I had the opportunity to attend a Central basketball game at Palermo School about a month ago, perhaps a month and a half ago, and the room was packed. There were families in the stands, there were people standing, there were students in attendance. They were playing a good game of 5-on-5 and a team environment. And, not only do these sports bring a sense of accountability to this age group, something to look forward to, they have to have standards in their grades in order to play. Learning isn't just done in the classroom. It's done outside of the classroom as well, whether that be on the playground or as being part of a team or doing something physical. So that is something that I think is really important, especially for the schools of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, where these attitudes are high and defiance is high and language is high. They need to be held to an accountability and something to do. They need, something to do, or perhaps even have the option to do them. So I think that's really important. It's something that we need to bring back into our schools. We're going on year 2.5 of COVID now, and we're still sort of in this mentality state of these kids have been through so much. Okay, let's go. We need to go. We need to keep moving. And maybe that sounds insensitive. I don't know, but it's time to start putting some accountability in place and having clear, defined expectations of our students and our schools and our parents. Tagging on to Bill's comment about introducing training at back to school night in 10-minute increment, I think that's a fabulous idea. Make it a requirement. It's a mandatory requirement to sit in there. And my last comment is, here's the thing with kids. If they know they can get a free pass, they will try. So with discipline and consequence, if they know, oh, they'll let me go, they're going to do it. They're going to try it. All kids, any age. So anyway, I moving forward, I would like to, I'm anxious to see the plan for consistency and accountability moving forward. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other final comments from our administrative team?
No,
All
thank you.
right. Thank you very much for working on this project, and I look forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:36. Thank you.
Okay.